Today we're talking about Matthew Perry's grueling, funny, brazenly honest autobiography, Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing. In one word, captivating. Okay, synopsis time. Well, it's an autobiography, but there's still a plot. It basically goes like this. We follow a young, charming chap named Matthew Perry as he grows up in Canada to young, beautiful, emotionally unavailable parents. He develops an addiction for making people laugh as a way to keep their attention. He moves to LA, becomes an actor, develops an addiction to drink as a means to have fun. Matthew scores big and lands a role in a sitcom called Friends as the funny guy Chandler. He loves it and is fulfilled for 10 great years despite his addictions proliferating in the background. Throw in some self-hatred, some truly incredible anecdotes about celebrities, and far more talk about addiction. The whole timeline is intercut with modern day Matthew battling to get and to stay sober. Okay, so review time. Wow. This book really blew my hair back. I smashed through it in 2 days, which was really refreshing. I'd had a string of 2-star reads, and suddenly I'm like holding my Kobo in front of my face as I'm walking around town because I just couldn't stop myself from reading. It's frighteningly honest from the start, which is confusing at first and a bit confronting, but it just becomes really charming soon. Matthew Perry is unflinching in his self-judgment. He doesn't ever let himself off the hook. It seems as if he made the decision to tell all with this book, because he never shies away from a story, no matter how bad the light he's painted in. The addiction stuff, as expected, is harrowing and quite difficult to read about. My heart really bled for the poor guy, and it gave me a good perspective about my own life. What use is millions of dollars and beautiful apartments and beautiful partners when you can't concentrate on any of them because all you're doing is waiting for them to leave or thinking about scoring anytime you've got a second to yourself? Matthew's narrative voice is really charming and it's quite brusque, which I personally loved, but I don't blame you if you find some of the jokes a bit bawdy and brash. There's also a lot of flippant talk about women, about life, and about his medical issues that stem from his addictions. Again, I personally liked all of the gory details because it freaked me out and made me sympathetic to our narrator. The book gave me a renewed sense of empathy and compassion for addicts, which can't be a bad thing. Any book that leaves you wanting to appreciate your life more is a good read, I think. So, what can we learn from this book? I have 3 lessons. Lesson 1, blunt honesty. It's charming. I think you can tell if an author or a narrator or a person in general, you can tell when they're hiding a part of themselves. And it's annoying, right? You want to peek behind the mask, whatever the mask is. If someone's too macho or judgmental of others, it reads as insecurity, and that leads to second-guessing everything they say. But in this book, because Matthew Perry is so bare-faced and upfront, you get the feeling he's letting you see everything, even the bad sides of himself, especially the bad sides of himself. And this leads you to trust him more. Later, when he's telling you stories about Hank Azaria or the multitude of women he's fallen in love with over the years, you fully buy it because he's already proven he's got no reason to lie. Plus, the guy spends his time flitting between multi-million-dollar apartments speckled throughout the hot spots of the world. I don't think he really cares what the readers think of him. There's something irresistible about truth tellers. Show me your vulnerability and I'll want to keep listening. Show me your bruises and your scars and the parts of yourself that you hate and I'll more than likely love you for them. It makes a character relatable when they show you the badness within themselves. Because we can all relate to that badness and we can relate to feeling shame about feeling the badness. It's this just dirty cycle and it's such a load off when you read about characters going through the same spiral thinking as you. So how can we apply this to our own writing? Well, if you have a character that has shameful thoughts, put them in the book. Your character doesn't have to be perfect to be likable. They don't even have to be honourable or brave most of the time. It's better if they're not, actually. It's much more heartfelt to have a cowardly person learning how to become brave, than reading about some legendary hero who's never had a second of self-doubt. Show us the scars, show us the bruises, show us the humanness in your characters. Okay, lesson 2. Tasty, gossipy treats. Matthew Perry is a very famous person, and he's been very famous for a long time. Because of this, he has so many stories that feature people I couldn't imagine rubbing shoulders with. He's done films with Salma Hayek and Bruce Willis, and he acted in the most popular sitcom of all time for over 10 years. When he's telling you stories about Brad Pitt coming on set, or Julia Roberts sending him flowers and talking to him on the phone for hours at a time, there's a part of you that's just very simply titillated. I love reading about celebrities and famous people at the top of their game. It's a bit shameful to admit, actually, but I can't help it, I'm just into it. Now, I don't know exactly how we can relate that to our own writing, but maybe there's something in the idea that human beings are naturally excited by the prospect of living a high-status life for a while. It's wish fulfillment. Reading about gorgeous, famous people who can get a table at any restaurant on any night of the year, that's just fun. And finding out they have flaws and that their lives are not always perfect, that's healthy. but it's still fun reading about their wild privileges for some reason. You know, flying all over the world, staying in amazing hotels, having flings with some of the most gorgeous people on the planet. Those are the kind of stories that are quite simply fun to lose yourself in. Maybe the way we can apply this to our own writing is to have our characters enjoy the finer things in life every now and again. It's like in Harry Potter 6 when he gets into Slughorn's special little clique, or when Elizabeth Bennet finds herself amongst the wealthy in Pride and Prejudice. There's something quite seductive about that world. Every documentary about a famous musician, you know, there's a time before the inevitable downfall where the fame and the cash and the love and the affection is just delicious. And of course the lesson is that wealth, abundance, that doesn't fill the holes in your soul. I think Jim Carrey said he wished everyone in the world could get rich and famous so they realized it didn't solve their problems. I mean, sure, that's awesome. You know, riches and fame aren't the key ingredients for a fulfilling life, but it's fun to imagine that they could be nice for a little while. So let your characters have some fun. Lesson 3. Keep a little bit of light in the darkness. So despite the tenebrous trials that Matthew Perry goes through in his life, mainly with drink and drug addiction, what he calls the big terrible thing, this book is filled with laughs. Even while he's relating a time he had to be cut open because of the damage he's done to his innards, and he's the worst pain imaginable, there are quips and jokes and funny turns of phrase being thrown out all the time. I mean, he's a comedian, right? And he makes his living from making people laugh. And this means that even though there are long stretches of rough going, where you just feel absolutely terrible about how capable the human brain is of fighting itself and creating these strange mutations that cause wonderful people to slowly destroy themselves, it's never that depressing. Or if it is, it's not for long. Like I said in the video about sorrow and bliss, an author can get away with a lot if they're able to make their reader laugh. It doesn't have to be jokes, exactly, but the ability of your protagonist to reflect and find the humor in their own situation, no matter how dire, that's really, really likable, I think. This book ends on a high note, which made all the difference. Much like the final scene of a film affects our feelings about the film as a whole, the final chapter of a book can retrospectively alter a reader's perception of the entire book and the experience of reading it. If I get to the last page and I close the cover, and the experience of reading that last chapter has put me in an emotional space where I can just bask in that delightful feeling of having gone on a journey with someone, whether I'm feeling inspired or enlivened or edified or terrified, that colours my entire experience of the book, for better or worse. So, to recap, blunt honesty creates trust. 2, tasty gossip creates shameful but delicious intrigue. And 3, if you can make your reader laugh, you can take them to hell and they'll have a good time with you. Much love. Cue the lightning.